So, Vi, I'm going to show you how to shape the dough. So what we do is we just got this out of the refrigerator, or it just arrived if we're really hungry, and then we're going to shape it and let it sit. Ideally, that would be a whole hour, and then we're going to make the pizzas. There might be some cases in which we don't have an hour, we'll just rush it, but that's going to let the dough proof. It's going to let it rise a little bit. So I'm going to show you what I'll do, and I'll let you do that, okay? So first, just going to cut that, and it's sort of sticky on here, which is okay. Just going to invert that and pull the dough out of here. And this is sort of like, I don't know if there's a better way to do this. It's just a little bit of a sticky process. But once you get the dough ball out, you can sort of use that ball to pick up any leftover dough that's in there. And this is pretty good. And I'm going to show you one thing. With this dough, it's a high hydration dough, which means it has a lot of water in it, so it's sort of sticky. If I move slowly, it really sticks to my fingers, do you see? But if I move quickly, it doesn't stick at all. And that's because dough is viscoelastic, which is pretty cool. It means it changes properties based on how fast you're moving. So when you're handling the dough, you're going to want to sort of move a little bit more quickly to make sure that your fingers don't get too stuck in it. So if it looks like I'm moving sort of fast, that's why. And when you watch bakers, they're like, but like sort of confident, but they move sort of quickly because their fingers won't stick to it as much. So what we're aiming to do right now is, I just put a little flour just so it was a little less sticky, but I'm taking the dough and I'm making a seam in the back, and then on this side, I'm making like a nice sheath of gluten. So you can see it's like, it's a little torn right there, but it's pretty smooth, and that's really what I'm aiming to do. Got a little bit more flour on my hands. And so I'm just creating a little tension on the top of that, and then that's going to be good enough. And I've got like a nice little round ball, and that's going to go right there. Do you want to do that one?
How do you like
Just tear at it out there. Just have fun with it. You got it. Yes. You just be sort of rough with it. Pull it fast. There you go. Perfect. And see, it felt like it wasn't going to come off, but there's not much left on it. You did a good job. If you really want to get a couple more pieces there. So now, why don't you set it down and just pull it up so you start creating that seam a little bit. There you go. Yep. And you can get a little bit of flour on your hands or on the dough if you need to.
What does the flour do?
It just makes it less sticky on your hands. It provides a little release. Yep. And you just, there you go. So you want to be gentle on that sheath with your fingers and just sort of mostly like, yeah. It's sort of like fast and gentle at the same time. It's looking really good. And you can even put a little bit of flour up there and make it a little less sticky for your fingers. It's looking really nice. Okay, so just sort of tuck in that little seam. You got it? Perfect. And then put it right here. And sometimes bakers will have other little tricks they'll do. Like they'll set a piece of dough down and they'll like use the surface to sort of roll it. And there's ways that people make rolls and stuff where they shape it like that on the surface. But this is looking really nice. It's nice and round. You have a good sheath. It's torn a little bit here, but that's okay. Mine is too. For this, it doesn't really matter. It's totally fine. If we didn't want it to tear like that, we probably would let it warm up a little bit before we handled it like this, because when it's cold, it's more likely to tear. But this is totally fine for the pizza. And then we're going to do one more thing, which is we have like a clean cloth, and we're going to put some water on this. But we don't want it to be like soaking wet, so put some water on this, and then I'm going to wring it out so it's just damp. And we're going to lay that on top of the dough. You know, we're just trying to keep it from drying out. So you could put this plastic over it, and that would work fine. You could put like you know, any other cloth. You could put a paper towel over it. It's just trying to keep the moisture so you don't create like a crusty, dry top. Then we're gonna let this sit for an hour and come back and check it out. All right, Violet, we're gonna make some pizza. You ready? Okay, awesome. So this is the dough after we've let it rest. So it's been just about exactly an hour since Violet and I shaped these, and you can see that they've sagged out a little bit, which is good. They've also grown a little bit in size, which may be a little less perceptible, but they have grown a little bit in size. And these are ready to be made into pizza. So if you touch them, my finger sticks to it. I'll put a little flour on it. If you touch it, you can see it springs back, but not all the way. Like my fingerprint is still there. That's an indication that like it's at a nice spot. It's ready to be touched and handled. If it was like totally elastic and sprung all the way back, it would give it a little more time. We've got the oven preheated at 425. If you can do this like 10 minutes before you put the pizzas in there, that's good, because the more heat that's in that oven, the better the pizza will cook. We have set this all up to work really well at 425, which we think most people's ovens can handle. But if you have an oven that can go hotter, that's fine. There's no reason you shouldn't. And if you have another way to make pizza you love, this dough should stand up really, really well to lots of different methods. So if you have a pizza stone you like to use or something like that, that should work great too. We're going to show you with a pizza pan like this. All right, so let's get started here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show Violet, and then I'm going to have you do one, okay, Vi? So first of all, I'm going to put a little bit of flour down. And you want a clean surface to work on. This could be a cutting board or something. We happen to have this like big butcher block counter, which is really nice for this because flour likes that wood surface. But if you have marble counters or some laminate, that should work fine as well. So what I'm doing right now is just getting a little bit of flour on the dough. And you can see the way I'm handling it, I have sort of soft but confident fingers. So that's the name of the game here, because if you go really slowly, you'll start sticking more to the dough and stuff. And if you are really rough, you're going to tear things up. So you want to sort of be gentle but confident. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my fingertips like this to press down. And what I'm doing when I do that, you can see a bubble right there. I'm displacing some dough and using that to stretch it out. And it's allowing the dough to sort of start stretching out without fighting me. It's also allowing the bubbles to collect and stay in place so that we have like a nice shape to the dough, and we have like a nice crumb once it's built. The crumb is what we call like the inside of it. So you can see I'm just pressing it with my fingers a little bit like that. And I'm not pressing on the edge where I'm going to build the crust later. I'm going to flip it over and just do a little bit more of this, okay? So that's the first step, is just using your fingers to press it down a little bit. And you can see it's grown a little bit in size, but it's not as big as we want it to be. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define my crust. And so if you like a really big crust, you would hold back a little more. This is about the size I like it, but you can choose how big you want that crust to be. This will be bigger than it looks there. It's going to expand, but you'll see when I cook my pizza like what this size is, and you can experiment a little bit with what you like. So I'm just going around with my fingers, making a nice hard line, and I don't want to press through it. I'm not trying to rip the dough, but I'm just pressing a nice hard line there between the center of the dough and where I want the crust. And like I said, you can make a thinner crust, like less crust or more crust depending on how you do this. So I've got a nice circle there where I've pressed in with my fingers, and that's sort of my crust line. The dough's thicker here and it's thinner right there. And now I'm just going to pick it up. So I did that sort of quickly, but I'm going to gentle fingers, but with confidence. I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to use the back side of my hand to support it. And it's pretty delicate in some ways right now. Like, it has a nice stretch to it, but if I grab it with my fingers, they might go right through it. So that's why I'm using sort of broader, more gentle surfaces. And so I'm just flipping this gently, and I'm running my fingers. It's mostly expanding with its own weight right now. I'm not even doing much. I'm mostly just sort of letting it expand with its own weight. And you can see now it's grown a lot. So this is pretty good. I want to make it just a little bit bigger. And I guess this is like what people say, hand-stretched dough. But this is when if we were getting fancy, we would start spinning it in the air. But usually when I do that, it hits something above my head and gets stuck. Right, Vi? Okay, so that's a really nice size. That's like exactly what I'm aiming for. It's got a nice round shape to it. There's little bubbles there, which are good. Those are all gonna, if you don't like that bubbles in your pizza, you could go ahead and pop those right now. But I like that. I like when the pizza crust is bubbling up. This should be a really beautiful pizza. So at this point, we're gonna take some of our rice flour, which we're providing in the kit, and we're gonna sprinkle the rice flour on this pan. And this is going to be like a release agent that's gonna let the dough come off. And we love rice flour for this because it's really, it holds up at high temperatures without making bitterness, without burning. It's like little ball bearings for the pizza. So now I'm gonna take my pizza crust and I'm gonna go ahead and just lay that down. All right, and you can see I've got bubbles on the crust too. I like that again, but if you didn't like the bubbles, you could just pop them out right now. So this is the crust ready to go. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna put some olive oil on it. And probably like 1 or 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Probably more like 1 tablespoon. We're not providing this with the kit, so hopefully you've got some olive oil at home. If you don't have olive oil, you could use a different kind of oil. That's totally fine. And I'm rubbing this around, and what this is doing is making like a little fatty layer between the tomato sauce that I'm going to put on the crust and the crust itself. And that's going to let me get like a crunchier, crispier crust. And so this is, and I guess I'll show you one more thing. When I'm coming around, I'm actually hitting the crust a little bit with it. I don't want like olive oil all over the place. I don't want it seeping under there, but I am sort of rubbing a little bit of that on the crust as well. Now it's ready for some sauce.
When you're rubbing it around, do you pop the bubbles?
You know, they probably, not on purpose, but some of them probably popped a little, but it's okay. There's a lot of bubbles in here. Were you seeing some of them pop?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna use my spoon, and this is sort of a larger spoon, so depending on the size of your spoon, you might do this a couple times. We give you more tomato sauce than you should use. So we want it to feel generous, but like, you can see I've used like half of that, maybe a little less, and that's the right amount for this pizza. And so I'm gonna now use the back of my spoon, and I'm going to spread this around in a spiral. And I made a little mistake there. That's okay, but it's gonna make the crust stick to the pan a little bit in that spot. So you wanna avoid that if you can. And then you see, I like to spread a little bit of that tomato sauce. Part of why I made that mistake is I like to go all the way to the edge. It's a little bit dangerous, but it'll actually brown up nicely. And I sort of like that taste of that like tomato sauce that's cooked a little bit more. Next, we're gonna do some cheese. Again, we've gone generous with the cheese, so this is too much for 2 pizzas. So I'm not gonna put all of it on. I'll show you, you can play around, and everybody likes cheese at a different level on the pizza, but I'd say generally, I think the pizza will cook better and be more tasty if you go a little lighter on the cheese. So I would resist the temptation, but try it out. You know, this is part of the idea of having this at home. You can make it your way, and you can have fun with it. And you can try one thing one week and try another thing another week. That's about the amount of cheese that I'm gonna put on this pizza. So you can see that. These are the meatballs, and you could slice these up if you wanted. I think that they're great just crumbled like this. So these are already cooked. They're going to heat up and cook a little further in there, but they're not raw exactly. You want to do one? Oh, you want to do one for sure? You can leave one off. Thanks. And again, we're sort of generous. I actually think that's a nice amount. Thanks for holding off. I think that's a nice amount on there. I think a lot of times people like overload the pizza with too much toppings, and it affects the cooking and the texture later and how enjoyable it is. So try to restrain yourself a little bit. Like not too many ingredients on one pizza, not too much of any ingredient on one pizza. This is looking really good. This is going to go in the oven now. And I've got convection running. If you have convection on your oven, it would be a good idea to turn it on. If you don't, it's okay too. Like the recipe has been tested both ways. It should work either way. Let's just take a quick look at the first pizza we put in. My guess is that's a little bit earlier than I want, but it's getting very close. I'm just going to show you. Here we go. Looking for this offset spatula, which I love this tool. And the reason I'm looking at this, if I pull this up, do you see it's starting to get some structure? Like it has a little floppiness in the middle, but not a lot. But it's starting to get some structure. If I look under there, the color of the crust is starting to get just a little bit of color, like sort of a golden brown. Like we're not gonna, with this technique, we're not going to get like a char. We're not going for like a blackened crust. That would be overshooting it. But we also don't want it to be like overly like pale. All right, so this is looking really great to me. The cheese is not burned, but it's browned a little bit. You can see the color on the crust. That's from where that tomato sauce went over a little bit. And as I take this off the pan, you'll see it's got like, see it lifts nicely. It's got like a really good structure. I'm even hearing some like crunchinesses in it, which is awesome. That means that the crust is gonna be a little crunchy on the underside, which is just what we want, but it should still be really chewy on the interior. So we'll let this cool for a minute or two, and then we'll cut it. And any way you cook this is gonna be really, really yummy. So we're gonna go eat a little pizza lunch.